The best thing about all of this was that I heard the fans get involved again. Let's not get too excited though. It was Qarabag and we expected to beat them.
Sat there thinking, well, when was the last time Liverpool were 2-0 up after 20 minutes? Liverpool were just ruthless, and yeah, we haven't been able to say that about them too often this season.
Well, entering February, we're in the last 16 of the Champions League. We're still in the FA Cup. We've got to make sure we finish in the Champions League. From this point on, what represents a good season for Liverpool Football Club right now?
I'm not going to get excited over Qarabag. I need to see this kind of form in the Premier League.
You know, you only have to look at the applause from inside Anfield after the Qarabag game to see that the vast majority of match-going Liverpool fans remain behind him.
I'm here for it. I'm backing him all the way.
You'd have to hold your hands up and say Slot's made a lot of mistakes this season. So have his players made a lot of mistakes, but it doesn't mean he's suddenly become a bad manager overnight.
It's like a roller coaster. My emotions, I think that's with all Liverpool fans at the moment, is literally just up and down.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But it's going to be a tough game.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Inside Liverpool. We're on TalkSport's YouTube channel and on your smart TVs. The morning after a really good night for Liverpool Football Club in the Champions League, getting the victory against Qarabag, and it was a convincing victory. Liverpool winning by 6-0 to guarantee our place straight into the last 16. Over the next 15 minutes or so, we'll take a look back at last night, the last week as well, and look ahead to the week to come. A big game against Newcastle on Saturday evening and a couple of days left of the transfer window. I'm your host, Sam Ellard. As always, to my left-hand side in the studio is the former Liverpool winger, Champions League finalist, Jermaine Pennant. How are you, Jermaine?
I'm very good, thank you, Sam.
Good. And joining us, making his first appearance on the show, I'm very excited about this, by the way,
Yes.
because it's a man who's I've never met before or spoken to before, but I spend my life just looking at his social media, basically, his Twitter, waiting for updates, reading his bits. It's James Pearce, the Liverpool reporter at The Athletic. James, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. We're good. We were good, Jermaine, aren't we? Because we watched Liverpool last night, not just win and get the 3 points, but there was goals, there was a clean sheet, like Liverpool of last season.
No, and the best thing about all of this was that I heard the fans get involved again. The excitement in the, singing and involvement with the players and reactions, which was good and not dull. But yeah, look, let's not get too excited though. It was Qarabag and we expected to beat them convincingly anyway.
It was a 6-0 victory for Liverpool. So Liverpool finished third in the Champions League phase, going straight through to the last 16. In the round of 16, one of 4 clubs to Liverpool. It'll be either Atletico Madrid, Club Brugge, Galatasaray or Juventus. We'll find that out in the next couple of weeks. But James, you were at the game last night. What did you make of the Liverpool performance?
Yeah, I think, as Jermaine said, you have to caveat it with the fact it was only Qarabag. It was a game that Liverpool were expected to win. Yet, I think you also have to factor in there's been a lot of games we've expected Liverpool to win this season and they haven't. It was only Burnley, it was only Leeds, it was only Nottingham Forest, it was only PSV, and they made a hash of those. So I think to see Liverpool play with that kind of fluency going forward, the tempo and intensity was so much better. And just to feel the change in the atmosphere at Anfield was big, just to blow a team away, because it just hasn't happened. I was sat there thinking, well, when was the last time Liverpool were 2-0 up after 20 minutes? And at Anfield, I think the last time was actually Atletico Madrid in the Champions League in September, and now we're at the back end of January. So and Qarabag, when you look at some of their results, they've beaten Benfica, Copenhagen, Frankfurt. They drew with Chelsea. So, they're not absolute mugs. But Liverpool were just ruthless. And, we haven't been able to say that about them too often this season.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to be able to talk after a victory, isn't it? It's been a frustrating couple of weeks, hasn't it? But in this Champions League run, Jermaine, beating Atletico, beating Real Madrid, 1-2, you had to beat some really, really good teams along the way. Do you maybe think this Liverpool team could be better suited to the style of the Champions League?
100%. The proof's in the pudding there. Like, teams in the Champions League, everyone has to win. It's not a league, if you don't win, you're out. So teams have to go for the win, not sit back and be happy with a point or a draw here and there. So the game's more open, and we've got the players. If you give them the time and the space and the pockets, we can cause trouble. It's just that we seem to, some reason, struggle now when it's everyone's behind the ball and we've got to try and break them down. That's when we're finding it difficult.
Yeah, James, you mentioned the atmosphere. It was much better last night. Sort of, you've covered Liverpool for many, many, many years. You've, some of the more difficult times, but some of the great times over the last couple of years. What's it been like inside the stadium over the last couple of months?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of frustration and a lot of anxiety and nervousness because even when Liverpool have won games at Anfield, too often they've left it in the melting pot to the last 10 minutes, and then you can just sense the mood changing because they've been hanging on, and of course because of some of the issues that have blighted them in games, not dealing with set pieces, not being clinical enough in the final third, and then conceding such soft goals at the other end. Though that has generated this kind of general collective unease, really, and of course, the last home game against Burnley when they made an absolute hash of that, throw away 2 points. There was a fair few boos at the final whistle, and you don't hear that at Anfield very often. It's that usually I'd say there's a lot more patience, but of course I think part of it is because what happened last season sent expectation levels just rocketing, and then of course with the money that was invested, there was this feeling, well, now Liverpool are ready to dominate, and of course the reality this season's been so different.
Jermaine, on the game last night, I guess one of the big positives is Mo Salah scoring. Took his goal really well, scored a great free kick. It's his first goal for Liverpool since November the 1st against Aston Villa. He did go 8 appearances without a goal before this evening. And look, we know Salah struggled this season, but fingers crossed. I mean, that goal can just give him a little bit of confidence now to try and get back to the Mo Salah that, we know on his day is one of the best footballers on the planet. Yeah,
listen, for any attacking player, coming off with a goal is massive and great for your confidence. Doesn't matter who you're playing. You saw Ekitike come off after 67, 69 minutes, and you could see the frustration on his face because he knew there was goals there. He doesn't need to get that confidence because his confidence is sky high. But, he could be, if he'd have stayed on, he may have got 2, he may have got an hat-trick, which, he knew that himself. So for all attackers, like getting goals is actually huge, going into your confidence and to, games to come, to put you in that good headspace.
And Wirtz and Ekitike have now assisted each other 5 times in all competitions this season. It's the most by 2 players aged 23 and younger for Liverpool since Owen and Gerrard in the early 2000s. So, look, Ekitike started off really well, didn't he? But again, we mentioned it the last couple of weeks on the show, but more evidence last night of Florian Wirtz, Jermaine, just getting to the level that, we ended up spending all that money on him for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw all the headlines and the comments about Florian Wirtz, no goals, 007, this, and then,
Feels a long time ago now.
What a waste of money. And I stuck by him. I could see it on the pitch. It's just like the team wasn't really in a great place at that time and wasn't finishing off his chances that he was creating. And now he's got used to the Premier League. It's money well spent in my eyes. He looks like he's one of the best, in that role in the Premier League at the minute.
James, did you always think that Florian Wirtz was going to come good for Liverpool after, that tricky start? It looked like the ability was always there in the player, even if the consistent performances weren't.
Yeah, I think that was what always gave you that belief that you could see the talent. And I think just because of the size of the transfer fee, people just jumped on it so quickly. And I always thought, come on, take a step back. 22-year-old lad living outside of Germany for the first time and joining a team that wasn't functioning properly. That was where I had a lot of sympathy for him, and getting to grips with the difference in the intensity and the physicality of the Premier League compared to the Bundesliga. But yeah, I think over a number of months now, there's been more and more signs of him getting up to speed. As you said, that understanding between him and Ekitike has grown. And yeah, what is it? I think 5 goals, 2 assists for Wirtz now in his last 9 games. And yeah, he's an absolute class act.
And on Salah, James, it feels a long time ago now, but I'm sure you were in the mix zone when he was Leeds away, wasn't it? When he kind of gave that bombshell interview. Just to go back from that moment, did you always think that Mo Salah was going to come back from AFCON and be a Liverpool player? And then my second question, sort of a similar one to Jermaine. Do you think he's got a couple more months good performances in him for Liverpool? Do you think he can get back to close to the levels maybe of what we've seen over the last couple of years?
Well, on the first one, no, I'd be lying to you if I always thought he would definitely be staying at Liverpool for the rest of the season, because it was such a bombshell, what he came out with that night. My immediate thought and kind of my task in the job the next day was to try and establish. I wondered, is this part of some exit plan? Has he decided he wants to leave in January? Has he got something else lined up? And this is almost trying to engineer a situation where his position was almost untenable, because it was very clear from the people I spoke to at the time that if he was hoping to get Slot the sack, or to crank up the pressure on the manager, he wasn't going to succeed on that front, because the hierarchy were never going to side with him. And and I was shocked, because I know that Salah is such a competitive unit that you knew he was never going to take kindly to being left out of the team for 3 games in a row. But also, AFCON was only a week away, so I thought surely he's just going to bite his lip and go to AFCON. And but to do what he did, I've never known anything quite like it. To talk about being thrown under the bus, and to say his relationship with Slot had completely broken down, and that the Brighton game could be possibly his Anfield farewell. But gradually, I think over the days that followed, it became apparent that it was just pure frustration, that it wasn't part of some orchestrated attempt to get a move. And it also became clear that Liverpool wanted to reintegrate him. And since AFCON, he's knuckled down. There's been no issues whatsoever. His form has still been a concern, certainly at Bournemouth last weekend. But I do think there were welcome signs against Qarabag. And yes, with the caveat, it was only them. But I think that goal will do him the world of good, because you could see what it meant to him in front of the Kop. Yeah. It was an emphatic finish. And it seems weird to say it about Salah because of what he's done in the game for so long. But he has looked short of confidence. So, and there's been times when his decision-making has let him down, where he's almost doubting himself. And you think, well, hopefully a moment like that will help him now kick on.
Did he stop for you in the mix zone last night, James, or not last night?
No, didn't even walk through last night. No. Just Ekatike and Virgil.
Oh, I tell you what, Virgins. What were you like? Were you okay stopping in the mix zone, Jermaine? Or did you do one of those where you pretended you're on the phone? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking a call. And we can all see that nobody's on the phone.
I've done that. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it's one of the most frustrating part after a game. You just want to get on the coach, or you just want to get in your car, get back home.
These journalists, they're working hard. They're standing there at 10:30 trying to get some quotes for the pieces in the paper or website.
My running with journalists, it was always wanting an headline. So I was like, I'm not giving you one. I'm on the phone. Leave me alone.
Honestly, James, he's bang out of order, isn't he? I'm sorry on his behalf that he didn't stop you in the mix zone. Jermaine, we've done lots of shows, haven't we, this season? It has been a little bit, not doom and gloom, but downbeat. We've had a tough Premier League season, given what we had last season. But we were entering February. We were in the last 16 of the Champions League. We're still in the FA Cup. We've got to make sure we finish in the Champions League. From this point on, what represents a good season for Liverpool Football Club right now?
Look, I think from what we've seen and where they are now, I would say that a top 5. I'm bringing one back.
Should
now.
Be top 5.
I'm saying top 5 because a 5 still gets you a Champions League spot. There's no difference going 4th or 5th. So as long as we make Champions League football, because financially that will take a hit, especially with the money we spend. So if we get a top 5 and a silverware. Whether it's the FA Cup, whether it's the Champions League. Obviously, I'd love it to be the Champions League, but some big teams still in there. But so it's Champions League football for next season, guaranteed, and a silverware. Let's get to a final.
Jermaine, there was one bit of bad news last night. It's that Frimpong went off early. Hamstring problem. I think Arne Slot confirmed after the game that it is not a good one. So as of last night, we haven't got a right back. We've only got one available centre-back in Virgil van Dijk. And we've got Milos Kerkez and Andy Robertson. So 3 fit defenders come the end of last night. That might change going into the game this weekend. But so frustrating with Frimpong because he came back from an injury, didn't he? And then looked really, really good, provided us with that great threat down the right-hand side. So bad news for us, but also gutty for him as well.
Oh, no, absolutely good. You don't want to see any professional, any footballer, any sportsman get injured. Can be a very dark and lonely place at times. And like I said, when he just come back from injury, and he was looking in great little form, that pace down that right, the width he was giving us, he looked like him was getting used to the Premier League, getting used to Liverpool, same with Florence. So yeah, it's a massive shame. But we're running on, we're thin at the back, and. I'd love to ask James if, maybe transfer window.
I think the last 15 minutes might just be me throwing names to James Pearce and hoping to have some good news.
we can't be starting to now play midfielders,
Yeah.
centre back and right back. It's not, you know, if you want to get in that Champions League spot, we've seen how hard this league is. We need a strong team.
Coming to you shortly, James, on transfers, I promise you. But just to round up, James, the actual Champions League phase. You know, we shouldn't maybe underplay how well we've done, finishing third. You know, going to Inter Milan and winning, beating Real Madrid, beating Atletico Madrid. You know, a tough Premier League campaign so far, but you know, to finish third, go straight through to the last 16. A pretty impressive run so far.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, certainly avoiding that playoff round is a godsend when you look at how stretched the resources are currently. You know, if they had somehow ended up in that playoff
James, I've
round,
seen some Liverpool team sheets with you playing a centre-back in a couple of games, you know?
I think I'd need to be on your shoulders to win a header. But it has brought out the best in them, as you guys said earlier on. I just think the way that football has been in the Champions League is much better suited to the players that Liverpool have got and the way that Slot sets them up, because more often than not, when it's a proper game with two teams that want to play, that has brought out the best in Liverpool this season. Where they've had massive issues is where it becomes, you know, a lot more stop-start, a lot more physical, especially when you look at the profile of the kind of players they signed last summer. You know, they aren't particularly big and physical players. They're more technical. They've had issues with set pieces, of course, Premier League-wise, which, again, you don't really see too many teams in the Champions League throwing it 50 yards into your penalty box. So, yeah, it's been an impressive Champions League campaign. And, yeah, and I know some people took kind of offence at Slot saying after the Qarabag game that, you know, let's not forget that 2 years ago, this was a club that got knocked out in the Europa League quarterfinals by Atalanta, because, you know, some people perceive that as a dig at Jurgen Klopp. I didn't. I think it was just Slot saying, well, let's just appreciate,
sure,
you know, how far we've come, because I think he does feel that his achievements in the job, you know, have probably been overlooked and lost because of the negativity of this season. And yeah, his win ratio in the Champions League is like 78%, which is crazy. You know, the challenge now is to ensure they go deep into the knockout stages.
Yeah, Jay, I want to ask you about those comments, because Lewis Steele, who covered Liverpool for the Mail, tweeted after the game and after the press conference, Slot's press conference, that is. He said, "That was a bizarre presser. They've won 6-0, but I've walked out the room with a sense of negativity. Someone somewhere has clearly wound up Arne Slot." And some Liverpool fans have picked up on the quote you mentioned there, James, where he said, "We're happy to be in the last 16, especially when only 2 years ago we were in the Europa League and lost to Atalanta." And some people have picked up on some other quotes he said over the last week or so, including, "I've already won the Premier League when the club has won it twice in 30 years. I'm surprised to hear that." Just on that presser last night, again, Lewis Steele there saying it was a bizarre presser. You think people maybe are looking too much into that, in particular that Atalanta comment? You think it was him just trying to sort of say, hey, come on, we're in the top 8, we've come third, let's not play that down?
Yeah, he's always been very, very respectful of Jurgen Klopp and what he achieved in the job, and also, you know, gone on record numerous times saying how grateful he is for not only the squad that Klopp left for him, but also the kind of the whole kind of setup and the mentality of the dressing room. So no, I don't think there was any disrespect there. Yeah, you know, people have obviously pounced on that comment about only won 2 titles in 30 years. Well, it's actually only 2 in 35 years. But of course, you know, previously when Slot has talked about that, he said it's 2 in 5 years. And so people say, well, that's very convenient to change it from 2 in 5 years to 2 in 35 years. And then, there's been other comments, hasn't there, that people have kind of pounced on. And I just think where he's at the moment, because there are a section of the fan base that are demanding change, that, you know, have seen what's happened at Man United, seen what's happened at Chelsea, and their patience has run out. I think every single word he says is being scrutinised to the nth degree. And sometimes we need to remember that, you know, he is speaking in his second language. You know, of course, there was the comment pre-match about, you know, maybe going out to PSG in the Champions League last season helped us win the Premier League. And of course, people say, well, you know, what are you on about? We're 15 points clear when Liverpool lost to PSG, you know, out with 9 games remaining. The title was effectively done. How was there any kind of silver lining going out of Europe? And again, last night, completely unprompted, he kind of said, I want to explain what I meant, which was, when you're only playing one game a week, you're much less liable to have injuries. And last season, like this season, we've got a relatively small squad. So life's just easier when you have one game a week to prepare for the Premier League. But of course, that isn't actually what he said the day before. But yeah, I think it's really just a mark of where he's at the moment, where I think if Liverpool were winning and playing well week in, week out, people don't really care what managers say. They just, everyone's I think a lot of people are looking to pick fault. And he has misspoken a few times.
How do you see it, Jermaine? I think James summed up there beautifully. I think, because form has been not great this season, you're right. Everything is, people are waiting for him to almost try and slip up and mess up and have a go at the guy.
No, actually, spot on. Sorry, and there'll be a little tad of frustration as well with the negativity, with the questions, probably with the fans. And we're all human, and sometimes we let that come out in all different ways. And like I said, when he's being asking questions, a little bit of frustration would come out, and that's why his response is.
James, you obviously would have worked with Jurgen Klopp as manager for such a long period of time. Obviously, last season with Slot, everything was great. We were winning, happy days. How have you found just dealing with Arne Slot, really, as someone that is in all of his press conferences, covers Liverpool for a living, day in, day out? My guess would be it's quite good for someone like yourself because he is quite an honest manager. He will just answer a question as it is.
Yeah, he is very honest, I'd say. And I think one of the reasons why he was able to make such a big impact last season and was able to be, everyone said you don't want to be the guy after Jurgen Klopp, you want to be the guy after the guy who replaces Jurgen Klopp. But I'd say he's authentic. He's never tried to be someone he isn't, which I think if you try and go down that route at a club the size of Liverpool, when you're in front of the media as often as he is, you're gonna get found out. So I think he does give very detailed, long answers, and I think I certainly want him to change on that front. I think it's no fun being in a managerial press conference where it's yes and no and nothing to say on that, and it's so I think you need to be careful what you wish for, really, in terms of. So, yes, could he say less on certain things at times? Well, yeah, but he's also honest. And I think sometimes as well, in a kind of typically Dutch way, he can be quite blunt. But when you ask him about tactics, it's almost like his love of the game is so great that he can't really help himself but to kind of talk about it. Where he's less open is, about injuries or about transfers or about contracts, the kind of things that clearly he doesn't want to talk about. But yeah, I've really enjoyed dealing with him, and I've been surprised in a way just how quickly things have changed. I know social media is not a great barometer of fan opinion in general. I think you only have to look at the applause from inside Anfield after the Qarabag game to see that the vast majority of match-going Liverpool fans remain behind him and still believe that he can turn this around. But yeah, I think there's no doubt he has been stung by just the torrent of criticism and negativity that's come in his direction. Bearing in mind he's a Premier League title winning manager, and when you throw into the mix, all the things that have kind of the hurdles in his path, right from having to deal with all the fallout from the tragic loss of Diogo Jota to the sweeping changes of last summer, which I think maybe inevitably led to talk of it being a bit of a transitional season. And then the crushing injury setbacks with, your record signing breaks his leg. Your right back suffers a season-ending knee injury. The young centre-back you're excited about does his ACL on his debut. You can't legislate for stuff like that as a manager.
In the back of my mind, Jermaine, for the last couple of weeks and maybe months, I was unsure about Slot. I think James just convinced me now that maybe I'm more. Let's give Arne Slot more time. But we spoke a lot about his future and people are discussing his future. But James said there about the fans inside Anfield feel like he can still turn things around. Do you think he can still turn things around?
Well, look, I'm going to say I'm not going to get excited over Qarabag. I need to see this kind of form in the Premier League. If I do, then. Look, I want to back him.
Yeah.
I want him to do well. I want him to be our manager. I want him to be successful, of course. But the only way that can happen is if results start changing. We're great in the Champions League, but what we do week in, week out is the Premier League. So if he can change that fortune around, start getting the results that we should be getting, starting at Newcastle, which is not going to be easy. then yeah, like I said, I'm here for it. I'm backing him all the way, but I only can back when something's proven to be good. If I keep seeing the same poor results and displays and nothing changing, then, I'm not going to continue to back that. But, I want him to do well, and let's see what happens to the rest of the season.
James, with on Slot, even through the 9 defeats in 12 and, the unbeaten run that came to an end the other day, but there was lots of draws in there. Do you think the kind of noise about his future was more external than internal? Do you believe that throughout this whole season that people inside the football club are always backing him? There was never any doubt, any question marks about him seeing out the season?
Yeah. I've never got the sense that he's been on the brink despite all the outside noise. I think, it goes without saying that when you've lost 9 in 12 as a Liverpool manager, you're going to be under some serious pressure. And we all know as well that, the mood inside Anfield can have a big part in terms of swaying decision makers. I think back to the back end of, Roy Hodgson's reign and, empty seats, and, that was probably the most damning indictment of that. And the ironic chance of Hodgson for England from the Kop, and it was, and you kind of sense that kind of even towards the end of Brendan Rodgers' time. And let's not forget, Brendan Rodgers didn't win the league, had a really bad season the season after in 14-15, and still kept his job after a 6-1 defeat to Stoke, and was allowed the opening of the following season before they brought Klopp in. So these owners, they've shown they're not trigger happy. And I think when you got the kind of credit in the bank that Slot has because of last season, and I know because there's a lot of people that want him out, suddenly this narrative takes hold that all he did was win the league with Jurgen Klopp's team, which
that's nonsense, isn't it?
I just think, apart from being massively disrespectful, you don't have to examine it too closely to go, well, if it's that easy, why didn't Jurgen Klopp win the league with Jurgen Klopp's team before he left? So, and it also ignores everything like, transforming Gravenberch into such an accomplished number 6, and, playing Luis Diaz through the middle, and all the little clever tactical things he did along the way to blow everyone else away last season. So no, the owners are still behind him. And again, I think because people have seen the kind of new manager bounce at United and Chelsea, they've thought, well, why not go down that route? And of course, Xabi Alonso's availability since he left Real Madrid has kind of added another dynamic to it. Because I think certainly some of the kind of online conversations I've seen of previously, it was like, well, if you're going to get rid of him, who'd you get? Who is out there? And now, of course, there's this guy out there that's got this real close bond with Liverpool, still adored on Merseyside from his time as a player. But no, I certainly don't get the impression that, patience may be wearing thin amongst the section of the fan base, but not amongst the Anfield hierarchy. And also I think it comes down to kind of at some other clubs, it can be a bit dysfunctional in terms of who appointed a manager and who still really got his back. And you had like the infighting, didn't you? With Amorim, with executives, and the same with Maresca, and relations breaking down. And there's just been no hint of that at Liverpool. Slot's relationship with Richard Hughes, the sporting director, is still strong. It was Hughes who was tasked with the search for Klopp's successor. He believed that Slot was the right man. He was vindicative last season, and he still believes that, yes, I'd say you'd have to hold your hands up and say Slot's made a lot of mistakes this season. So have his players made a lot of mistakes, but it doesn't mean he's suddenly become a bad manager overnight.
Interesting. Jermaine, how do you see that then? The Liverpool hierarchy fully backing Arne Slot?
No, I assume they are, and I don't think they're a management that will sack managers who've won them the league a year later, the year previous, and then a year later it's sacking the manager. If anything was to happen, it would be end of the season. I think they're going to stick by him and see how the rest of the season pans out. But I believe if he doesn't get Champions League football, winning a trophy is fine, because that can happen. But if he doesn't get in the top 5 and doesn't get Champions League football, I think his job will be under absolute massive pressure of him getting come end of the season.
Will that change anything, James, from what you just said to us there, if he does miss out on Champions League football, or do you still think, because of the reasons you just said, he'll be managing next season?
I think I agree with Jermaine. I certainly from the conversations I've had, I wouldn't say it's like Champions League qualification or bust, but for my personal opinion, I think you have to view it that way, because I just think, although last summer was so big for Liverpool, you already look at the squad and some of the issues that are going to need to be addressed come this summer, and it's another massive window they've got coming up, and that is not going to come cheap. And because of the self-sustaining business model, they rely so heavily on that Champions League money, even more so with the revamped competition and the extra games you get. So, yeah, I agree with Jermaine. I think it'll be very, very difficult for Slot to continue if there's no Champions League football next season. But yeah, that's more of an opinion rather than, no one said to me, this is what has to be achieved. Because I think also, it will depend on the circumstances around it. I mean, if they keep dropping like they are at the moment, fitness-wise, then you've also got a kind of, you might have to, if they're not going to dip into the market before the deadline, and this injury situation doesn't start to clear up, it's going to be very, very difficult for them.
I'll talk transfers with you shortly, James, but Jermaine, the games come thick and fast. Back to the Premier League, the bread and butter. It's Newcastle this Saturday night at Anfield, 8 o'clock game kickoff. I guess Newcastle, probably a little bit maybe at times like us this season, have been really, really consistent, Newcastle. They can blow really, really hot and cold. We know on their day they're a big, strong, physical team. Possibly Bruno Guimaraes might not be playing. Joe Linton didn't play last night against PSG. They had a tough game away from home in the Champions League. What sort of test are you expecting on Saturday night?
Well, we know what kind of test it is. We know what Newcastle are all about. And I think when they beat us in the Qarabag Cup final, I think that's the kind of motto that Eddie Howe will be implementing on these guys, saying, look, we know how they struggle in this low block. Let's not attack them. Let's not give them the space and time. Let's make it difficult. Let's make it horrible. And hopefully we'll get some joy on that. But with Liverpool at the minute, we could go in this game, we could win 3-0. We could go in this game, we could lose 1-0. It could be a draw. I really don't know. It's like a roller coaster. You come off with a great result, like we did against Marseille, all, excited, thinking, OK, this could be a kickstart, good result away. And then we'll go to Bournemouth and lose, and play Qarabag, score 6. We're like, this is the kind of football we want to see. Are we back? Are we going to get on that front foot from now, moving forward, key players scoring goals? And then we let's see what happens against Newcastle.
It's just the consistency, isn't it?
It's just, yes, literally, my emotions, and I think that's with all Liverpool fans at the moment, is literally just up and down. So we'll see. But it's going to be a tough game. No matter.
There's work to do, because even throughout that unbeaten run, lots of draws, we kind of remained fourth because a lot of the chasing pack as well have been really inconsistent this season. But we know United have picked up a couple of victories. Chelsea found a little bit of form under Lee and Rossini, go above us in the table. So, to state the obvious, we got serious work to do, don't we, to get outside that top 5 or 4?
I think Manchester United's 2 points clear of us at the moment. They're in 4th, we're in 6th. So every game now is going to be. We need to get something out of it, and starting with Newcastle, then we've got Man City. So we don't want to keep falling further back, because we're not, at the moment, we're not in a place where we can claw these points back. Because we look into it, we go, do you know what? I don't know what's going to be the outcome this Saturday. So we need to start winning, this game especially starting on Saturday.
Slightly thinner squad with injuries. How tough are those turnarounds Wednesday night to Saturdays in the Champions League? Is it literally recover Thursday, train Friday? Do you feel it? Is it?
You do, especially as the season starts. Start of the season, you're still fresh and still fit, and then there's still a lot of miles left on the clock. But as soon as you start coming to the back end of the season, and these night games, they'll be in training today a bit later than usual.
Recovery day today.
Just pure recovery. The ones who played maybe do a little bit extra to get the miles up as well. But yeah, you come next to me now. It's Friday. You're like, oh my God, I've got a game tomorrow. You can feel pains and aches everywhere. Still,
The legs are sore.
yeah, but they've got all the facilities to deal with all that. But yeah, it's not easy.
Jermaine, I'm now going to ask James the question that we've all been waiting for, and every
Please do.
Every single Liverpool fan will be no pressure, James, but every Liverpool supporter is hanging is hanging on the edge of all of your words. Are Liverpool going to sign anyone in January? If you say no, we're going to hang you up.
Say no, I'm leaving the studio.
Yeah.
No pressure. I usually get stick online for Liverpool not signing players as if it's actually my responsibility.
James, when I was younger, about 5 or 10 years ago, I was probably one of those people that would be texting you and tweeting you, going, "Oh, for God's sake, James, it's all your fault. What's wrong with you?"
I think my favourite ever tweet was someone messaged me to tell me my position was untenable at the Liverpool Echo after Liverpool lost 6-1 to Stoke.
That's brilliant. James, what was the one where, we might have been one of your colleagues at the time, was it Neil Jones who worked for the Echo?
Oh, yeah.
Who tweeted something like, "I've just had a fire in my house."
His garage was on fire, yeah.
And then somebody goes to him, "What do you make of the Suarez quotes?" And he goes,
yeah. Forget the fire. Forget your fire in the house. What about the Suarez's comments on Uruguay duty?
So funny.
Just and his social media's only got worse since.
Yeah, exactly.
They were the glory days. So yeah, I mean, at the minute, there's still no sign of the club stance changing. Right throughout. I think some people thought at the start of the month that they're just playing their cards very close to the chest. When a lot of the reporters on this patch kind of wrote that it was fully expected to be a quiet window, and they pointed to just how much Liverpool had spent last summer, and also a belief that the players that Liverpool feel they want aren't available now, certainly not at the kind of price they'd be willing to pay. So they were going to sit tight. Now, of course, over the course of the month with the injury situation, that's obviously been compounded by Ibrahima Konaté's compassionate leave after the loss of his father. It's just cranked up that scrutiny, hasn't it? Especially as you said on the defensive options with 5 defenders missing now. But I'd be surprised, just because I think Liverpool don't really go down the route of short-term fixes, and you think the last time they probably did that
disrespectful
was
to Ozan Kabak and Ben Davies, James. Those were the glory days.
I was going to mention those names, and you think, well, that didn't really work out too well, did it? And when you throw into the mix when they kind of panicked with the deadline approaching and signed Arthur Melo on loan, and you think, I think it's a lovely idea to think, well, go and get someone on loan, go and get a body, but they've got to be good enough, haven't they? Sure. And the reality is, there's not many players of the caliber who clubs around Europe be willing to let go at this point. So I mean, it's still possible something could happen if a market opportunity opens up. But Slot did also say after the Qarabag game he expects Konaté back in time for Newcastle on Saturday. He said Joe Gomez has got a chance of being fit as well, and Curtis Jones was only ill, so he should be back around as well. So it doesn't exactly solve everything, but it's reinforcements of a type.
Surely, James, the hierarchy is looking down on this. Look, we've got 5 senior defenders out. Potentially, we could be from an absolute disaster if Ibu Konaté or Virgil was to get injured as well. Surely they're not going to run that risk to go to the rest of the season knowing that we're in the Champions League, the Qarabag Cup, the FA Cup, and still got to get into a top 6 of a Champions League. Surely they're not going to sit there and go, well, we're running on bare bones. We've got kids on our bench. Look at our bench. It's like, you look at it's academy players. Surely they cannot go into the rest of the season and go, yeah, we're just going to run this risk. Surely they've got to get someone in.
I agree with you. I think they should. I think it's a massive gamble and I know, I understand that you don't want to pay over the odds and all the rest of it. And I understand the arguments that have been explained to me about why they didn't rival Man City for Mark Gay's signature, because I think every Liverpool fan would have absolutely loved them to get that deal done. Now, they just felt that the overall cost of the package was prohibitive because, although the £20 million fee jumps out, when when you factor in wages of over £300,000 a week over 5.5 years. I think that's £88 million. Then you've got a hefty signing on fee, hefty agents fees on top of that. So they just felt that wasn't value for someone who's a free agent in 4 months' time. But of course, I always look about it as well as the other side of it. Well, what about the cost of missing out on the Champions League? What about the impact of that in terms of what you want to do this summer? And where that sets things back, maybe for even more than a year if you're outside of Europe's elite, because then, not only is the financial thing, is a massive issue for a club like Liverpool, but, even attracting players, because players want to play at the absolute highest level. So, yeah, I think they need to make a defensive signing before the window closes on Monday. But at the minute, there isn't any sign of one. I hope that changes.
I think you may see a fee, but a loan. We've seen teams pay like not a massive fee, like a £5 to £10 million fee and on top of the loan. That possibly could be an option.
Yeah, I understand why possibly in this month it's not, it's tough to go out and get a long-term replacement for these guys and spend big money. But I thought a short-term loan option would, even if, just to get into the ball. I know you want someone better than just a body through the door. So I'll take your point on that, James. But I just think the absolute numbers, we're down to our bare bones. So I think somebody to come in, as even if it's back up to Virgil and Konate, and there's got to be somebody out there. With all the data they've got, these guys, Hughes and Edwards must have one player they know that can come in and do a decent job for us over the next 6 months that we can get in on loan, surely.
Surely there's a better centre-back than Endo. There's a centre-back out there who is a better player than Endo at centre-back.
Yeah.
Not defensive midfield, at centre-back.
Yeah. Again,
surely there's a better player than Curtis Jones and Sabozlak at Qarabag at right-back.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I understand that you're signing a long-term player there in January is an option, but I thought hopefully something can be done between now and the end of the window. So, James, I mean, does that then... What did you make, by the way, when you learned of the Andy Robertson story, what was about a week ago, that possibly going to Spurs? Was that close to happening or not as close as maybe some of people like myself thought, maybe?
Yeah, it was close to happening.
Wow.
Yeah. The talks reached a pretty advanced stage, and I think if Roma had kind of agreed to terminate Costa Simicas's loan, and for him to come back to Liverpool, that may well have facilitated it. I was a bit torn on it because initially I was shocked because I just thought, why on earth would you let Andy Robertson go at this stage? But then, of course, you think, well, actually, I can understand why they've at least had the conversations with Tottenham, because there was talk of a £5 million fee for someone who, is clearly, I think, expected to leave as a free agent in a few months' time. And of course, from Robertson's perspective, he's seen Milos Kerkez establish himself as kind of, the bona fide first choice left back, and he's clearly had one eye on kind of how much football am I going to get between now and leading Scotland into the World Cup. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, hang on a minute, this is actually in danger of weakening a squad that's already not strong enough for the challenges ahead, because there's a reason why Liverpool loaned out Tsimikas. There's a reason why Roma haven't played Tsimikas every week. He is inferior to Robertson, who's also a massive leader in that dressing room, and it is quite a young team. So, he's the vice captain. So the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, they can't possibly sanction this. This would be a real wrong move. And yeah, thankfully, I think when they weighed it all up, they decided to pull the plug on it, because it was the same at Bournemouth on Saturday. It was the same last night. Robertson's name was chanted by the Kop more often than any other player's name on the night, because he's adored by Liverpool, and he put in a proper good shift against Qarabag. And I still think I can understand it hurts him not playing week in, week out, because that's what he's been used to for so long. But he's still got a really, really important part to play for the rest of the season. And also, hopefully, he'll get the proper then send-off come May that he deserves, because I just think it would have been a bit sad if he'd gone off to Tottenham at the end of this window. And also, I think, is Tottenham necessarily the right place for him? There's uncertainty there with what's going to happen with the manager, a lot of negativity around there in terms of their domestic form. So, yeah, in the end, I think common sense prevailed.
Well, listen, if he was to go, we're speaking about players who are available. And I'm a bit, not confused, but why we've not gone for maybe Anton Robinson, who's at Fulham. You know, you probably can get him for the same price as you would sell Andy Robinson. He's in the same period of his contract. He's younger, he's quick. And in my eyes, in my personal opinion, I think he would give Kirk a run for his money as our main left back.
Yeah, would it be one of the names, James, that Liverpool spoke about last season? Was it between him and Kirk?
Yeah, he was spoken about. I got told that what put Liverpool off him was more age than anything else, because I think, am I right, he's like late 20s.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Maybe I need to double check, but I think he's late 20s, and the feeling was that Liverpool, obviously, you look at the age profile of the players they signed last summer. The only outfield player I think Frimpong was 24, the rest were younger, apart from Isak, who was 26. So I think there was a feeling that, you're going to buy young and develop players who already have got a decent level of experience and ability, but with a high ceiling. So that I think age was a big thing that counted against Robinson.
Can I ask you about Harvey Ellard? Because I'm perplexed by this whole situation. Harvey Ellard goes out on loan to Aston Villa, plays a couple of games, hasn't been involved for the last couple of months. He was back on the bench on Sunday, but if he hits a certain amount of appearances for Aston Villa, they then there's an obligation for them to buy him on a permanent. What have Liverpool made of this whole situation? They've loaned out a player to Villa, not even making matchday squads. And is there any possibility he can come back to Liverpool in January and be involved for Liverpool? Or is that just, did Arne Slot not fancy him?
I think there's a few things there. I think, first of all, I feel so sorry for Harvey Ellard, because when you think about it, he was player of the tournament at the under-21s Euros last summer, and there was an expectation that he would leave Liverpool, because I think he didn't get the game time that he wanted under Slot last season. And Slot was reluctant to use him at times. I think there's no doubt about that. I felt he could have given him more opportunities. And I was surprised that his future wasn't sorted until so late in the window. It was only actually when Liverpool got the green light that Newcastle were definitely selling them Isak, that then they were like, okay, now we're prepared to loan Harvey Ellard out. And of course, they did that deal. They structured it the way they did with Villa because of Villa's PSR issues. So it was like, because they couldn't afford to pay a fee straight away, it was like, well, we'll do this loan with an obligation. And of course, at the time, I remember having conversations with people saying, oh yeah, it's like it's a formality. It's only 10 appearances, and and of course that's going to happen. And then, for whatever reason, from what I'm told, Emery didn't really want him in the first place. It was other senior figures at Villa that were pushing it. And then of course Emery kind of does so well, and I guess in terms of like his kind of power base, I guess at the club, it meant that it was no one was really going to question how he was handling certain players because Villa doing so well. And he's effectively decided, well, no, I don't want to spend £35 million on Harvey Ellard. And he's been cast aside. And the problem for Harvey is, I know he would love to be back at Liverpool, and he'd love to be back at Liverpool at the start of January. But Liverpool's stance has been, the ball's not in our court. We don't have a recall option.
Right.
It's all down to Aston Villa.
Sure.
So Villa would have to pull the plug on it, and there were financial penalties written into the agreement that Villa would have to pay if they sent him back, because there was obviously a substantial loan fee and paying his wages. So at the moment, Villa haven't been prepared to do that. But I really, really hope for Harvey's sake he's not stuck there. I know he was back on the bench last weekend, but it doesn't look as if he's going to get the game time he wants there. And he could end up effectively losing an entire season of his career through absolutely no fault of his own. Because when I speak to people at Villa, they always say, what a lovely lad. His attitude in training is impeccable. And it's like, I just feel so sorry for him.
Yeah, for a young kid, I mean, could you ever imagine being in that situation where, you go out on loan to try and play more football, and you're basically spending most of the season not travelling with the team, not being involved? I mean, mentally for a young player or any player, that's got to be tough, right?
Oh, no, I couldn't fathom that. The reason why you go out on loan is to play football, when you're expecting to play football, because you're going to a team that either wants you or not on the same calibre as your team. So to go there, to go step down when you go on loan, to then not actually feature in any game, not be in those squads. That one for your confidence, one for your mental state in the football, it's not good. So he's going to have good people around him, family and friends and whatnot, supporting him because I know right now he's going through a little bad dark spot in his life.
No, let's hope fingers crossed he can get himself some football for Aston Villa. So we recorded this on a Thursday morning. James, is it Arne Slot press conference Friday and then Newcastle at home on Saturday night? What sort of game are you expecting there?
A tough one, a physical one. They've had some real battles with Newcastle. You think back to the Carabao Cup final at Wembley last season. Liverpool got bullied that day.
Yeah,
they lost so many physical duels and allowed it to be the kind of game Newcastle wanted it to be, which was very stop-start, heavily set-piece influenced and no real flow to it. And so that's the big thing for me with Saturday night is they have to try and make it the game they want, that they have to be on the front foot. And because I think when you're on the front foot and you're bold like they were against Qarabag, you bring in the Anfield factor, you energise the fans. And too often this season, the Anfield factor hasn't been there because what's been on the pitch has been too slow, too predictable, too cautious. And you just haven't had that excitement and buzz around the place. So give the fans something to really grasp hold of and to get behind. That's the big thing for me. And in the same way as Liverpool should never have lost to Bournemouth last weekend, but I think anyone who watched that game could see last 10 minutes, Liverpool were running on empty. And you could see, despite the absentees that Bournemouth had, you could see a team who were still fresh, haven't had a full week to prepare. Liverpool had obviously a midweek trip to France, didn't come back to the Thursday, flew down to the South Coast Friday. It was a quick turnaround. This time around, it's Newcastle, isn't it? They've had a real grueling game against PSG. They'll only be coming back today. They'll only then be, travelling down, I'm sure, to Merseyside tomorrow. So, despite the injury situation at the minute at Liverpool, which isn't ideal, as long as hopefully, at least Canate will be back, Curtis Jones gives them another option. They've got to build on it because nobody's stupid enough to think that what happened against Qarabag is a nailed-on sign of things to come. The real litmus test is Newcastle at home, Man City at home, and then a tricky trip to Sunderland. If in a fortnight's time we're still talking about a Liverpool resurgence, then I think people will start to believe they can still salvage something significant from this season. But yeah, there's been too many false dawns so far this season to be talking about turning a corner.
Jermaine, final word with you. I'm feeling quite confident on this after this episode of Inside Liverpool. Thump Qarabag into the last 16, beat Newcastle, get back into the top four. Final fun few months of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't say I'm feeling confident.
Come on.
Enthusiastic is probably the word, as in maybe things can... Well, the injuries we got, I find it hard to really be as enthusiastic and confident as you are, Sam. But it's Liverpool at the end of the day. We've still got a lot of quality in that team. And yeah, there's still a lot to play for.
Lots to play for. Jermaine, thank you very much as always. I'll see you next week. And James, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully, fingers crossed, see you again soon.
Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and no pressure, by the way, but I will be staring at your social media page for the next 4 or 5 days, waiting for the Pearce update, okay?
I'm just going to ring round centre-backs across Europe.
Please do.
If Richard Hughes can't find one, can you find one, please? Please, you've got to, yeah?
I'll find some if not.
This has been the latest episode of Inside Liverpool. Thanks to my guests, Jermaine and James. Inside Liverpool will be back next week on Tuesday after the Newcastle game. We're on TalkSport's YouTube channel and your smart TVs. A good couple of days for Liverpool. Well, in the Champions League anyway, getting that win against Marseille, thumping Qarabag into the last 16. We'll see you next week.